Today we're breaking down a fascinating foreclosure case. It's a story where a homeowner, representing himself, went toe-to-toe with a corporation. And really, this was more than just a fight over a house. It turned into a high-stakes chess match of legal strategy, where a single procedural rule, a technicality, would decide the fate of a huge amount of money.
$305,000. Let that sink in. That's the amount of home equity that was on the line. So this wasn't just about a piece of property. It was about a significant financial asset. And that, right there, set the stage for one heck of a legal fight.
And at the heart of this conflict, you've got this classic David versus Goliath scenario. On one side, you have Jeremy Bass, the homeowner. He was acting pro se, which is just a legal term that means he was his own lawyer. And on the other side, DPW Enterprises, a corporation with its team of attorneys trying to get possession of his home.
All right, here's how we're going to walk through this. First, we'll set the scene and really understand the legal battlefield. Then, we'll look at the plaintiff's legal attack and how Bass defended himself. After that, we'll dig into a crucial admission that totally changed the game, see how it all ended in a procedural knockout, and finally, explore the appeal and what it all means.
Okay, so let's start with the arena itself. This fight didn't happen in a full-blown trial with a jury and witnesses. No, it all went down during a motion for summary judgment. And that is a really powerful legal move that can end a case before it ever really gets started.
So the plaintiffs were trying to win the whole thing right then and there. Their argument was basically, look, the facts are so obvious, so stacked in our favor, that there's nothing to even argue about. They wanted the judge to just make a final call immediately. No trial needed. And here you can see the two completely opposite narratives. The plaintiffs tried to frame this as super simple, a straightforward action for ejectment. You know, we've bought the house at auction, we have the deed, case closed. But Bass, he was painting a very different picture, one of a deeply corrupt process, full of auction irregularities and misconduct.
So let's look at the plaintiff's opening move. They didn't just make an argument, they essentially built a legal fortress around their position, and they used Idaho's specific foreclosure laws as the building blocks.
Their whole strategy really relied on these three heavy-hitting statutes. To put it simply, Idaho law creates a powerful presumption that once a trustee's deed is handed over after a foreclosure sale, that sale is valid and final. And this puts a massive burden on the homeowner to prove something went wrong.
Now, this concept is the key that unlocks all those legal protections. To get shielded by those statutes, the plaintiffs had to be good faith purchasers. And what does that mean? It means they had to show they bought the property cleanly, without any knowledge, or what the law calls notice, of any serious problems with the sale.
So, how did Bass counter this? Well, he didn't try to argue around the laws. Instead, he went straight for the jugular. He directly attacked their claim to be good faith purchasers in the first place.
And Bass didn't just make one point. He unleashed a barrage of arguments. He was alleging everything from bid manipulation and collusion to buyers intimidating people, all the way to the fact that the entire foreclosure was based on the wrong legal document to begin with.
A really central part of his defense was this tactic that he called the notice shell game. He argued it was a deliberate strategy the plaintiffs were using to just confuse everyone. So, what was it? Okay, this breaks down their alleged strategy. The plaintiffs kept saying Bass had notice, but they would intentionally blur the lines between these three very different legal concepts. For instance, if Bass complained about an improper notice to vacate, they would pivot and talk about the notice of sale. Bass argued this was all just a smokescreen to distract from the most important question of all. Did they, the buyers, have notice of issues with the sale? Because if they did, their good faith status would be destroyed. And then, the case took a really dramatic turn. Just a few days before the big hearing, the plaintiffs filed a new document, and buried inside it was an admission that would become the absolute centerpiece of this whole fight.
Wow, this is a huge deal. In a public auction that's supposed to be competitive, the lender's opening bid is absolutely not public information. Getting that number beforehand is a massive, unfair advantage. It strongly suggests the auction wasn't so competitive after all. And Bass jumped all over this as proof that the whole thing was rigged.
And if that admission wasn't enough, it was backed up by some pretty powerful physical evidence, the cashier's checks that the plaintiffs actually brought with them to the auction.
This table really shows just how bizarre the plaintiffs' actions were. Normally, at an auction, you bring checks for more than you think you'll bid, and then you get change back. But these guys, they had a pre-printed cashier's check for the exact winning bid, down to the last penny. When you combine that with their admission, well, it really starts to look like the outcome was decided before the auction even started.
So, with this pretty damning evidence of a potentially prearranged sale, you'd think things would have swung in Bass's favor, right? Well, they didn't. In the end, the case wasn't decided on the substance of these explosive claims, but on a strict, cold procedural rule.
Just look at this timeline to see the immense pressure Bass was under. The plaintiffs dropped that bombshell declaration late on a Friday. The hearing was on Tuesday. So Bassi, acting as his own lawyer, had to work all weekend to figure out what it meant and file 3 separate detailed responses on Monday afternoon, literally hours before he had to stand up in court.
And there it is, the knockout blow. The judge threw out Bass's final arguments on a technicality. Why? Because the court's rules don't have a provision for a reply to a reply, which means the court never even officially considered his response to that huge admission and the evidence of the pre-printed checks. The case was over.
But that procedural loss, it wasn't the end of the story. In fact, that exact ruling, the decision to ignore his evidence because of a technical rule, became the very basis for Bass's appeal to the highest court in Idaho.
And at that point, the whole focus of the case shifted. It wasn't just about this one foreclosure anymore. It had become a bigger fight about fairness in the justice system itself. The question became, is it really fair to hold a regular person representing themselves to the exact same complex, unforgiving rules as a team of corporate lawyers?
And this is the provocative question this case leaves us with. It really strikes at the heart of what we mean by procedural justice. It makes us ask if our legal system is truly designed to find the truth, or if it sometimes just rewards those who are best at navigating its incredibly complex and demanding rules.